Big hey now to everybody out there. Let me know that you can hear me in the chat there, Dewey. Thanks for coming. Thank you for all the content you're adding. I appreciate it. I put some links out there in the chat as well for actuator.finance and also their Telegram. And of course, if somebody's interested in learning about HEX, you come new here, you go learn about HEX over at hex.com. So it's out there. So lots of exciting stuff. Nah, there's nothing exciting today. Today's a pretty quiet day. It's a Saturday. At least where I am, it's still Saturday. And volumes have been pretty low on chain, not a lot of action. So we've just seen a good 6 to 8 million in volume today across all the different pairs and everything that's going on out there. So with that, let's go get started. I'm messing around with my cigar over here. All right, let's go take a look. The first thing I'll do is just check in on our share rates. You can still see the share rates down below 44K on both chains, somewhere around 43,599 on Ethereum and 43,248 on the old Pulse chain. So we're still kicking around these numbers right at the moment. Follow up from yesterday's stream, where I was evaluating and analyzing what would happen here shortly with some changes. And this does affect the actuator system, by the way. One of the reasons some of us are so bullish on the actuator ecosystem is because you can stake maximum number of days and be able to still have access to some of your liquidity and be able to do things with that over the next 15 years. But when you're doing that, you don't have to access it. But when you're doing that, you're getting maximum number of T-shares. You're getting the greatest benefit for the longest period of time because of the lower T-share rates. And as we go into the future, I don't know what it'll actually be every year, but we'll go up anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 hex per year. So I mean, 5,000 on the T-share rate is about 12% per year, and so we'll see that going into the future, 10 to 12% roughly, right? Something that kind of range, and so it's always going to be more expensive to get the T-shares that you might want out there. Taking a look at our other information, let's go see what we have here. I think I have my share rates up. I do. So I have my handy dandy share rate changes, just monitoring the types of changes that we see. And we're expecting a 1,000 plus change in T-share rate. And so if we go, I'm going to go to this little visual, make this big, and just look historically at the changes that have taken place. This is what's a big deal to me. It's a big change, right? I mean, last time we had a big change was back in February 2025, and that was for 1,068 on the Ethereum side. Okay. And so, yeah, you can look historically here. I mean, yeah, there's been some big ones that have taken place. 500 in a single day, or the stake in 800 or 700, 600, 1,000. Of course, big payday was 3,700. So this will be the second biggest change probably when it occurs. So we'll be watching for that, and that's kind of bullish for the whole HEX ecosystem. So when I say that, how do I know it's going to be that? Well, I go do math. I do math. Right? So if I go look at on the Ethereum side, which I do expect this one to get above 45 sooner than the Pulse chain. I can look at all the upcoming stake days and take a look at each one of the stakes that's ending. Pretty reliable because we know mostly what they've earned for HEX and just do the calculation. And so I know that We had a stake expire on the 20th that has not been ended yet. That would push the rate to 45,335. It hasn't ended yet. It may not end. So what happens if it doesn't end? Well, we've got one that's expiring today. So after midnight UTC, this one could end, or the other one could end. Don't know which one will do it. It'll push it to 45,368. And if that one doesn't end on the 23rd, we'll have another one that may end on the 23rd would be the expiration. Next day would be the 24th. It would push it to 45,393 and so forth. So you can see, we have a series of stakes that are going to be coming out that could end. And if any of these end, it'll push it over 45K. And so if I was a betting person, I'd bet on that. I would bet on it for sure that that's going to happen. We look at these being early stakes, but again, on the 20th, we have a 1700 hex change that could be taking place. And that obviously the 20th is in the past. This person hasn't gotten around to ending their stake. If they don't end the stake, the next one up is this one here on the 22nd for 44,972, and 23rd, 24th, 25th. Now you'll notice that we have multiple stakes here again that'll push it up. And then if the ones over Thanksgiving end, this one here on the 26th or the 25th will be in the 45,000 territory. So all things being equal, I mean, they're pretty similar numbers anyways, right? They're not incredibly different new share rates, but it just shows the difference between the chains and how they're operating. And again, that affects people's ability to get T-shares. Hello, Australia, Shaggy dude. Let's see, Dewey. I'm not going to read all the things that you put out here, but I think you got some good reading here, guys. You can take a look at all the Dewey's comments in here. Let's see, what do we got in here? I like this one the most outlandish. The most outlandish strategies and moon maths. Yeah. Hey, listen, I think just talking about HEX doing 100X right now sounds pretty outlandish to people. It does. But it's in the cards someday. And what's out there? Let's see, Tam, I see you. I forgot to send you a text, Tam. I was going to tell you that we were going to be streaming, but I really just put this together about a half an hour, 45 minutes ago. All right. And then Dewey's last comment here, you can make a stake for Quattro Cinco right now through Actuator, get an HSI, and create a HEX stake that's like an NFT. Tradable, yet still fully intact. Amazing. And it gets deeper, yep. Yes, it does. It does get deeper. Now, another reason some of us are pretty stoked about the Actuator ecosystem. It is immutable, right? So you can go see the code. You can go look at the audits for what that's worth. You can go check that stuff out directly at the actuator.finance site. Taking a look at the charts, it's important to zoom out, and I know that this zooming out probably makes us feel even worse though. But you can see, at least on the hourly, things that had kind of calmed down a little bit, so kind of like going sideways. So I know we're feeling it in the USD perspective, right? That we came down 50% down here, to 0.001. It's almost never been cheaper in years, right? Look at that. It was the last time you could have gotten that price. It was 24 when we bottomed. All right, so I know we're feeling the pain, but this is crypto. This is in the game. 50%, 80%, 90%. I mean, those are the types of things that can happen. So you always need to remember that. Now, some people, what they'll do, and I'm not recommending a particular asset, but what some people will do is they'll take these opportunities to reduce their cost basis this, because units are really king in all of crypto. You know, I know how, because I live it like a little bit everybody else. I know how badly it makes us feel, no matter what the asset is, when the price goes down in USD. However, what we often can't really judge in our brains is how, you know, like a million hex at $3,700 right now on Pulse Chain, and you'd be like, oh, that's crazy talk, right? Well, you know, we were way up here, you know, way up there, you know, at a 10x. And so, how would you feel if you were to get a million hex and all of a sudden it's worth $37,000, or, you know, instead of $3,000? You know, I mean, how are you going to feel then? And this isn't like a hard number to reach, you know, in terms of the old crypto business. Yeah, but I mean, units are king. But this is DeFi, so you guys, everybody does their own research, right? Right, Mr. Guinea Pig, Mr. D'Artagnan. How are you, D'Artagnan? It's kind of crazy. So we have this situation with actuator being out here, being over a year old, guardrails set up. You know, meaning the bones of the system are built. It is using HSI's hex staking instances. If you had ever had a hex staking instance from the past, and you can actually come over here and delegate it and access liquidity in the form of HTTs and mint them. Right, so you can come over here and mint them, and then because the HTTs have a market and there's liquidity, you can swap them, you can LP them, you can farm them, right? So what is an HTT? Well, when I go delegate a hex stake, and let's just say it's 100,000 hex for the sake of argument, typically, particularly for the long ones, you have to, there's some nuances here where you have to do your own research and dig into it a little bit further. But typically what I could do with that is turn around and mint 100,000 HTT 6,000, for instance, right? But because it's not worth a hex yet, because I can't get hex back yet, you can kind of guess that, okay, so the price is going to go up in terms of hex from now until, you know, day 6,000, which is what the HTT 6,000 refers to. And you can just kind of like draw like a straight line, just pretend it's going to go up nice and even. And that shows you what your total ROI will be in terms of hex. And, you know, because this liquidity is out there, people can come in, they can trade it out if they really wanted to, exit their stakes into HTTs, even exit all the way out to DAI. I saw somebody do that the other day with quite a bit of value. They could just decide they're going to take whatever value they can and get out. But you know, people go, wow, that's crazy. Well, maybe it's crazy, right, to exit, but you don't know what everybody's situation is, right? And so, but that opens up opportunities for somebody else, right? Because if somebody else wants hex in the future, they can just buy those and get them real cheap. So the first thing I pulled up here is the actuator dashboard. I put the link out there, and it just gives you some really good, timely information about what's happening with the system. I mentioned the HTT 6,000s. It says, hey, this is the best total return right now. So if somebody has, you know, so one of the no mess, no fuss methods of getting involved with the actuator protocol is somebody has liquid hex that's not doing anything right now, and you're willing to put off time. You don't want to stake or whatever. You can swap the hex for an HTT, right? And now you're holding the HTT. And so when we look at the 6,000 on the list over here, you can see that the 6,000 is at a price that's 43% cheaper than a hex, right? So that means if you were to swap hex for if you're going to swap HEX for an HTT 6000, you're getting more HTT 6000s, right? Because it works off the value. And when you do that, you know that in 10 and a half years, right, it's going to be worth 1 HEX, right? And so because you know it's going to be worth a HEX in that period of time, you can figure out what your total return is going to be, what your ROI is going to be. And they do it for you on the screen here. And then just divide it by the number of years. So essentially you can take HEX right now that is liquid, swap it into an HTT, and just hold the HTT and earn 43% APR. Or excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I read the wrong one. And earn the 7.28% APR, and the total ROI is 76%. So you just swap into it. And you can look at each one of them. They all have different numbers, right? Because they're all different timelines. The 3000 is another one. This is the one that has the best APR right now. So let's say you're willing to wait a couple of years, maybe. I mean, you can always swap it out when the market comes up. I'm just saying that if you're willing to wait until the end, you get the full amount. You're not subject to anything. You can swap these things whenever you want. You can get those HTT 3000s, and they're almost at a 20% discount, at an 18% discount, and the APR on that is 10%. And so in 2.2 years, you'll have 20% more HEX, right? Because you get 20% more HTT 3000s right now. And so this is what they call a fixed ROI and a fixed APR, because in this ecosystem, HEX is the money. In this ecosystem, HEX is the money. And that HEX is staked into the HSIs, and the HSIs are used as collateral. And so each one of these HTTs is backed by a HEX in the future, right? And so the HTTs, when they're created, they act as bonds, 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 right? And they're very much like bonds, right? Because we're saying, hey, listen, I'm going to get this bond, and it's going to pay me, 10% APR in HEX, until its redemption date, which is 2.2 years, and that gives me a total return of 22%. Now, in the world of staking, where people don't want to stake directly themselves right now, that might be an opportunity, right? They don't want to lock it up, and in any way, shape, or form, maybe. Short stakes are a couple percent points right now. Quattro Cinco's 4.5%, 5% ish kind of range. For if you're doing native staking. It also applies, of course, to HSIs. So people might not want to lock it up for that reason, and so they keep it liquid, but it's not earning, it's not doing anything. And so this is an opportunity to amplify what you have in terms of HEX, just simply by swapping into them and take them off the market. And so right now, the HTT 3000, I would say, is too cheap on the market. In fact, that does change every time somebody does a swap. Things will go up, down, whatever. But pretty cheap on the market right now, right? So I can essentially, again, draw that line into the future and say, the discount on this thing really should be about 10%. Just by eyeballing it and looking at at where the price is, but it's at 20%. So, my guess is that the HTT 3000s are probably about 10% cheaper than they should be, but they are. And so, yeah, I could just simply come in here and swap into any of these and realize instantly these returns from a HEX perspective. And again, dependent on being able to go all the way to redemption dates. Now, a lot of this is a lot more detail, a lot more math than most of us want to do. But I'm already seeing people doing things like they have the HTT 7000s, and they're very, very cheap or expensive right now. So the HTT 7000s are very expensive right now in terms of, again, drawing that line into the future. And so somebody might take that HTT 7000 and swap it into a 3000. Right, so they have a Quattro Cinco stake. So for those of you like to do a little bit of speculation, you might have a Quattro Cinco stake and somebody puts it out and mints their 7000s. They get about 60% on the dollar back if they swap it back into HEX. They could actually turn around instead and swap it to 3000 right now, and get that, whatever that quantity is, in 2.2 years. And if you're speculating on that type of stuff, and perhaps you're saying, okay, I'm going to do that because I know HEX is going to run. So maybe I'm doing the HTT 3000 or I'm doing the HEX, and I'm going to come back in when the market cycles down, get the 7000s and pay them back. And now I've taken profit off the top. I've got my 7000s back, and I still have my HEX stake. So there's about 100 different strategies. It's a little confusing after a while. So I say some of these are really simple. Like, hey, listen, I know for sure that this HTT 3000 is backed. If there's 10 million of these out there, it's backed by 10 million HEX. So, and the worst case scenario for me is in 2.2 years, I can trade those HTT 3000s back for HEX by redeeming them. 100% I'm getting my HEX back. There's no opportunity for loss, right? In that way. We go look at the pools, we can see there's about 60K in liquidity in just the 3000 HEX pool on Pulse Chain. So that's sitting out there. You can see that there. So people are putting up LP. It's incentivized LP. So they're putting up LP to earn off of it. But just give you an idea of what's there. And usually when I'm looking at swaps, you can kind of look at the 1%, 2% of the total LP, the TBL, as being probably the sweet spot for not getting hit with too much slippage or price impact. Right, so just keep that in mind when you look at things. But you can see each of the tokens have liquidity. The 3000 at 58K, 4000 at 26K ish. 5,000s at 70K, 6,000s at 37K, the 7,000s at 113K. A lot of people are attracted to the stakes that are out the furthest, right? So we see that quite a bit. And then next October, a new stake or new HTT will come out called the HTT 8000. And that'll be another community type bootstrapping event. And you'll be able to do that and start getting HTT 8000s. Crazy thing here is any of us can come in and create a new one right now for any day. You don't have to stick with theirs. The reason you stick with the ones that they have bootstrapped is that's where the liquidity is. But let's say you were a big player, you had a lot of value. Even if you're a little player, you could go create your own token on Go Pulse or wherever, right? 9inch. Do your own contract, create a token, and turn around and mint your own HEX. I mean, you could just do it with HEX anyways. But you could mint your own HEX. However you're going to get that, go mint your own HTT and back your new token completely by an HTT. Put up your own liquidity. You could, I've been thinking about what would I do if I wanted to create my own HTT. How would I create that? How would I put up liquidity? How would I make it tradable? Why would I do it? It's got to be a reason, right? There's got to be a reason to do it. But you could do these and match them up with Maxi and Deci. People have talked about that. You could create a new steakhouse, pooled stake, and use the receipt token, match it up with one of these. You could have your own token. So there's some legs for how this system may operate, and just a lot of different things that could be happening over here. So people do put these pools up. My guess, and this may change over time, but my guess is that what we would see in these types of pools, at least now, is somewhere in the low ranges for APR. I mean, I would count on probably 1 to 2% APR over time as being kind of the norm. Though we've seen these go up. It depends on how it gets adopted. We could see, like, these are the pools for, the 6, the 4, the 5, the 3, the 7. At least in the last 24 hours, the 6 has been running 3% ish. In terms of APY, with more volume on system and a lot more trading that could go up. But I think kind of like the sweet spot probably be 3-4%, maybe 5%. If there's a lot of trading and activity that goes through the different pairs and the network that's there. So why is that important? So if people do put up liquidity in here, they can think about earning 1-2% probably in terms of the LP fees. And it is V2 on PulseX. And so that liquidity is compounded, right? And when you go a little bit further with that, if somebody does put up the LP, well, even those 3000s right now, there's HTT 3000s. There's an incentivized pool, our farm pool here on Actuator, where that's paying right now 28% APR. So we call this yield stacking. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I thought that I wanted to go and do this, right, I can say, okay, I got HEX right now. I could take half of it, go swap it, for the HTT 3000. Now I've got half of it is HTT 3000, half of it is HEX. On the half that I swap for the HTT 3000, I'm earning a 10% APR. Right, so on that portion, I'm earning 10%. Then I can turn around and say, I'm going to put it in the pool, right, with my HEX. And now I'm earning another 2%. Right, so now I've gone from the 10% to add another 2%, stack another 2 on there. That's 12% APR. And then if I go a step further and I say I want to farm it, well, here's another 28%. 12 plus 28 is 40%. So now I've taken my dormant HEX that I have, in my wallet, and I've put it into action, right? Put that capital to work. Now, of course, if all of us went and did that all at one time, these pools will grow pretty quickly, and because the APR is based on the amount that's in the pool doubles, then the APR is probably going to halve, right? But I mean, that's what happens with farms, anyways, when people farm. And what people get out of this is they get actuator token. They get actuator token. That's what the APR is based on. That's what the rewards are based on. It's really not just an incentive token. It's a revenue token, and I'll show you that in a moment. But you can come in here, do your LP, and stack that APR, and then earn actuator as part of the farms, and then take the actuator and go sell it on the market. And so you can see APR here: 28%, 93%, 44%, 102%, 40%. Why are these so high? Well, they're high because I don't know. I mean, I know why it's happening, but I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. I thought actuator price might come down a little bit, but actuator price has been coming along pretty well. So I'm going to go look at that here with you in a second. But it's been staying high, and the 4000s and the 6000s are new. Right, it's only been about a month and a week that the 4000s and 6000s have been out. And they've got about, combined about 60K in liquidity. It was a lot higher before this recent dump, right? I mean, remember all of these, even the dollars, right? It basically priced in HEX, right? This is future HEX with HEX, future HEX with HEX, future HEX with HEX, right? HEX goes up, this goes up, right? So HEX goes down, these go down. That's the primary liquidity. And so a very little impermanent loss because of that. It's only a very tiny bit of leakage out of the system because you're basically earning HEX on HEX, right? It's kind of an innovative methodology. So you have these APRs, and they pay you out again in actuator. And if we look at the actuator token in terms of pulse, not just in USD, but in terms of pulse, which is the important one, it did, as expected, after the launch of the protocol, it came down. Right, we didn't know it was going to come down, but it came down way down, and back in January. This is even before I knew about it. Somebody bought it back up. They took the actuator off the market, came back down. You see some other things happen, and came back down and dumped into March. I think this was around the time of I don't remember the exact date. This would have been around the time of the Vegas meetup in 2025. People got interested in it. It pumped back up here to the 22 level, which is, we kind of regained that level now. But then it came down. Somebody bought a bunch up, came down, bought a bunch up, came down, bought a bunch up, right? But then it bottomed over here in August and September, right around the 5 pulse level. And now it's done like a 4x from there in terms of pulse from that point. Now, why did all this happen? Well, I think it's part of bootstrapping, right? People start getting actuator token. They're like, well, I don't know, what do I do with this thing? I mean, when it launched, I swapped for like $50 of it, and I just left it in my wallet. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just kept it. But this is kind of like the first initial distribution and adoption phase. It came down. People were getting it, and they said, hey, you know what? I'm getting it. This is my reward. I'm swapping it out, right? And then as we came down further, these spike ups, why would somebody buy them, right? Well, that's the revenue part. We're going to talk about that, because if I put my actuator into vaults, I actually earn HEX from it in the form of HTTs. And so people who were really interested in that bought it up, bought it up, bought it up, bought it up, bought it up. Well, then when August, September came around, people were beginning to know and look into the future and say, hey, these 2 new tokens are coming out. And the 2 new tokens, again, are these 2, the 4,000 and the 6,000, right? They were scheduled in advance in the white paper that they were going to come out in October, and they did. They did. And what happened is people said, well, listen, if someone's going to mint these HTT 4000s or the 6000s, maybe I want some of the fees from that. And they needed actuator to do that. And that's what's led to this rising amount, because you can see all the way through October right here. People were buying the actuator off the market and buying it up. And they were doing that so they can put it in the vaults and earn more HTTs. Now, it was very possible that after that we would see another downtrend for a year until the 8,000 launched. But what we've been seeing is more and more minting, because the system's being used more than it was before, right? New adoption, just a new project. I mean, only a year into it or so. And so instead of it going down, now it's going up. And this is in these turbulent times, right, with everything on chain. So it's been going up, and because it goes up, both in pulse value and USD value. You look at USD, it's a little bit different chart, of course, but you can see the same basics occurring on USD. This again, daily chart. You can see that it's been coming up over time, and every time it goes up, it affects this calculation. Woo. So this is why these APRs are high, right? And so to really clarify that, let's go look at vaults, and you can see how much of the actuator token is actually in there right now. We have close to 200 million actuator in the vaults at the moment. And it's a 1 billion supply, right? And currently it's being distributed, but after the 3rd year, it won't be distributed any longer. And it'll just be whatever's on the market, and it'll become slightly deflationary, probably deflationary. So they're not making any more of them, right? So about 20% of the total future supply is already in the actuator vaults. And so why would somebody put them in here? Well, every time somebody mints a new amount of HTT 4000s, there's a 1% fee. And that 1% fee is paid in HTTs, and those HTTs go to the people who deposited in the vaults, right? And so I know a few people, maybe some people listening now, that did very well with the HTT 7000s, for instance, which had the greatest amount of mints. It also has the most actuator in there. And then people were just, depositing their actuator in here, getting HTT 7000s as the reward, which is future HEX, and just building their bags that way. So it's a very innovative system, to provide opportunity to do things with HEX. It's all related to HEX, in one way, shape, form, or another. So quite interesting in that way to me. So then you end up with a lot of different opportunities. But again, I focus just on, we didn't even talk about really like a staking methodology that people use for this. I'm just saying that, hey, somebody minted their 3000s because they staked, right? And they sold them cheap, and now they're available. It's kind of like when we talk about Maxi or Deci, so they're cheap. So, and there's some that are cheaper than others. And but there's also fluctuations in these prices. And so now, kind of like second and third tier, there are people actually trading cheap ones, expensive ones, going back and forth. And, that might not be my cup of tea, but I recognize that people are doing it, and I can see it. And their whole effort is to trade between these things in order to get more HEX, because it's all HEX. Pretty interesting, I think. Just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This market is probably, I keep using the 500,000 level, but we're down, so it's come down to 300,000 here. But it makes me wonder if I can see these little trades now that might be, 200-300 trades, $300 trades, and people willing to do that for 10, a 10%, gain on their HEX. What happens when HEX is, 10x the price? And this is a $3 million market, or 100x, and there's a $30 million market, or, we get that 100x and we double the adoption, and now it's $100 million or $60 million market. So you can really see how people might really get into trading this, at least the trader types. I'm trading this type of thing. All right, let me back out. I went pretty deep in some detail. Let's see what you guys, see if we got stuff coming in here in the chat. Let's see. I see all these comments. Do we out there? You guys have questions? Drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to them now and get through there. All right, I went all the way back to D'Artagnan and his guinea pigs. How are you, my friend? So good to see you. Hope you're staying safe. Let's see what else we got. Do you have something specific you want to bring up? Oh yeah, Max Power. Yeah, Tran's cool, man. I like her. She was real, man. I like Tran. Kim, I never met her before, but she's like, she's like a real person. So I thought that was pretty cool. I liked her a lot, and I've been, of course, watching her stuff. MVS, keep up the good work on that distribution of news, man. Reading that all the time. See you there, Mr. Frank. Wank Fright. I don't know if that's a new name. Yeah. And Dewey saying those HTT 6000s, which are HEX stakes liquid, yeah, they were a little bit higher. I think they went to as high as 122% APY. They're running, like we were looking at, just around 100 or so. Yeah, 100% or so. And yeah, I do think this has $1 billion potential as well, right? I think long term, this could turn out to be something really, really cool and useful for the HEX ecosystem. Now, one of the things people say, well, I don't understand why people would do X, Y, and Z. And you don't have to know why somebody did it. You don't have to know why somebody wanted their liquidity and put their HEX liquid HEX stake on the market. All I need to know is if I want to buy it. If it's cheap, then I want to swap for it. I don't need to know why they did what they did and all their different strategies. Maybe they screwed up. I don't know. But it's DeFi, right? It's DeFi, and the HTTs are HEX. And so if I want them, I can go get them. Right. And it's up to me to decide whether it's, whether they're valuable to me or not, and it's up to you as a user to do that. It takes a lot to get through all this stuff, to really understand this. Now I'm trying doing by doing these streams and talking about it. They get a full chat. I mean, the guys, the founders, they'll talk to you guys and answer questions and all that type of stuff. And always, if anything ever looks weird, everybody should stop, think, act, review. Right? Don't ever do something that you think you're uncomfortable with. Right? It does take a little bit to get your hands around this one, though. I'm pretty sure most people can figure out the simple swapping. Yeah, there are a lot of strategies to it. I did a number of streams, and I will do them again. Feels repetitive to me, but I know new people being introduced might want to see them. But you can go look on my channel. Get these actuator streams that are out there, just kind of going over some of the different strategies. Like, what is the game? But here's the thing: there's like 6 different games. There's 6 different games. Like a bunch of people, and I bring it up not, make fun of the guy who did it or the lady who did it by accident, or maybe it was on purpose. But somebody bought HTT 4000s a few weeks ago when it first launched, and they wanted to get in on the farms. I'm guessing, and the farms were over 300% at the time, and they really pushed the price up on the HTT 4000s. To the point that the 4000s, you could swap a 4000 for 2 HEX. And when that happened, then you saw other people figure it out. And then they turned around and started minting 4000s and swapping them for HEX until they brought the ratio back down. And so, yeah, that's in the game. I mean, it's DeFi. That's what people do. And because our, so it's not negative, positive. It's positive for the guys that got the extra HEX that way. Maybe it even worked out for the guy who wanted the actuator through the farming. I don't know. But you have these things that we call mispricings, right? Because these aren't OTC trades, right? This is AMM trading, right? Automated market making on DEXs, and they're subject to the constant product calculation, which in essence is what allows price to slip up and down. And even though there's some pretty good liquidity here, that even with bigger liquidity where there's millions, if you do big enough swap, you're losing value when some amount of value. And so we will constantly see mispricings, right, based on what people are doing and actions that they're taking. And that's what I was talking about with the swapping. So you have people who might just want to come in and get HTTs, get more exposure to HEX by getting an HTT. They might just buy and hold and do nothing else, right? Then you got people who are going to come in here and say, hey, I'm going to do the LP and the farm route because I want the extra yield. So you have those people, and they may go as far as to vault their actuator to get more HT2s. So you have that. So you got stakers as well that might come in and stake through actuator and always do something like a Quattro Cinco in order to access the liquidity. And at some point in the future, they don't necessarily have to do it right now, but they can come back later and get it. You have that type of swapping. I was looking at the time preference swap. I call it the time travel swap. But if we look at real quick here at the HTT 5000s and the 7000s, they're basically the same price on the market right now. HTT 7 and 5000 are both 0.0023, and then one, a little bit more expensive, 0.00231 for the 5000. What does that mean to me? Well, this could be a time preference swap. Like, I don't know that I do all of these things personally, but I'm getting my head around it. Is I could do a Quattro Cinco right now for 100,000 hex, mint 100,000 HTT 7,000s, and if we don't count the price impact, I can then bring those up from being 7,000s, right? So I got the stake, the original stake, is a Quattro Cinco, which is out 15 years. I would get tokens that they're redeemed in 13 years, and right now I can swap them for tokens that redeem in 7.7 years, like almost one for one, and that's a time preference. I think it's you would call it a curve trade. Bond guys would call it that. It's a curve trade. You can basically move your hex closer into the present, by 6 years almost. So, and still have these stakes that you can hold on to in the future. That sure, they're delegated. You want to do something different with them, you gotta go get them out of hock by paying back the tokens. But they're still yours. You still own them, right? You can still pay them off. You could still, some people like to earn the HTTs in the vaults in order to do that, right? So there's a lot of calculations. So you have time preference swaps like that. There's value swaps where people are doing it based on value. Like, I know the 7,000s are expensive right now, and when I look at the 6,000s, I know they're cheap. So I could do the minting of the 7,000 and swap them for the 6,000s, and perhaps the net is like I get an extra 15% hex off of that. Long term, because everything is measured in hex value. So there's a ton of different options. A ton of different options that people might play with this thing in different ways. But you don't have to do all that. You can just simply buy and hold if you want to do that. You don't have to do anything. In fact, you just sit on your hex. But I think it makes sense to try to put that hex to work. Dewey's asking about just what I was talking about. Could you make a stake for Quattro Cinco, then delegate that through Actuator? Yes. And you can trade the 7,000s or 6,000s or farm them or do whatever you want to do with them. Yep. 100%. A lot of people don't understand too is like when some of us like the auctions, the HSI auctions, and you bought people that bought the HSIs. Those HSIs can be you can just come over here and delegate. Have instant access to the liquidity for that hex. So yeah, I think that's kind of like a big deal. So it's not just now. I know there's some people that don't want that. They don't want that, and that's fine, right? So I'm not trying to get people to do things they don't want to do, for sure, right? And so I got a lot of native stakes, right? So that's that. These are not native stakes; these are hex staking instances, which means that they're more accessible, flexible, and usable. And I've really come around to the idea that if particularly now for the 100% APR, like. Man, there have been a lot of other things people have done and chased that made no sense. It makes an awful lot of sense to me to make 100% APR on my hex. So yeah, what else can I say? So that's the kind of things I'm thinking about. There's just so many different options that are out there. Oh yeah. This is a good question. Rude Van Lee. This has been a good question, and this is why I would tell you that long term, there is a higher risk reward for Actuator, the token, right? And so, what does that mean, guys? Well, the Actuator system to bootstrap these LPs, right? That's why they're paying the APR, but they only pay for 3 years. So we've gotten, when I say they only pay, What I mean are these pools here that are incentivized and produce this APR. Well, at some point, all of the actuators distributed, right? So at some point, all the actuators distributed. And the actuators distributed on a 3-year time frame. Go down there, the page. I don't know if it's on this page or not. No. I have to go over to their vault page. Let me see if I get this guy. The distribution here or not. Well, anyways, what I was trying to get to, they have a lot of different, a lot of things here on these screens that we can go look at. But the actuators distributed for the first 3 years. We're 1 year into it. We're on our second year now. I have got too many windows open. I think that's what my problem is. Well, here you go. This is what I wanted to show you anyways. It was on the wrong page. I don't know why I did that. All right, let's bring it down a little bit smaller so everybody can see it on the screen. See how slow my screen is to respond to this stuff? Okay. And why am I not seeing the whole thing? I don't know. Let me refresh real quick. So it's only been distributed the first 3 years. And so now we're into the second year of distribution. And so over the first year, 350 million were distributed. There's some that have the team as an allocation, which is down here. But 350 million for the first year. We're in the second year now, where 250 million are being distributed. And then the final year, 150 million will be distributed. And so then the big question, and why I call it R&R, is this. Typically with the incentive token, the advice that most of us follow is, hey, you take some or all of it right away and sell it, right? Because the incentive tokens apparently go down in value, right? We saw that with Ink, we see that with 9-inch. You see it with other tokens that are out there. It's typically what happens, the value will go down. And so you want to lock in. If you're making decisions near term, you want to try to lock in your profits, right? But this is not purely an incentive token. It's also a revenue token. And so during this period of time, it's obvious that there will be APR because they're distributing and you have that access to it, right? But in the future, right, we don't know what the adoption will be. And so why would people keep actuator in the future? Well, perhaps I want to make an HTT 10,000. Or 9,000 in the future. Well, I can do it through here. I can bootstrap it through here. I can link it up with the HTT 7,000 if I want. I can set up LP. But if I want to do that, I'm going to have to mint the HTTs. And when I do mint the HTTs, 1% of those HTTs get paid to the actuator vaulters. And so the value proposition long-term for actuator is that the actuator protocol is alive and kicking. And for whatever reason, people are making HTTs. And so if I go make a new HTT right now, and I put it up on the system by clicking the button, you guys can go pile into my actuator vault and earn HTTs on any more that get minted. So that's how that works. So we shall see. And then the other thing with the actuator token, the liquidity with actuator, it's not exactly 2/3 pulse, 1/3 hex, but it's kind of close. It's kind of close to being like that. And so my asymmetrical R&R, risk reward is that this protocol takes off. And if this protocol takes off, then I want to have actuator because I'm going to put the actuator in the vaults so I can earn more hex that way. And we've been doing a lot of talking, and I'm not one of the founders, so I'm not even part of the team. I'm just reporting the information, what I'm seeing, because I see how it can benefit me personally to get cheaper hex. Right, so that's why I'm talking about it. Let's see. what we need is for the community to share Hex and Hex evolution with gigantic money. Yeah, yeah. Getting this information out to people that might be interested is really the hard part, right? Getting the communication out there. Like right now, I'm showing you. Um, right now, what I'm showing you is that we got people interested in this thing, and they're actually using it and using it appropriately. So there's opportunity here. I guess that's what it's going to come down to in the end, right? Is is this system robust enough, uh, etc. And will it attract the users? And ultimately, it comes down to making value, making money. And so again, people using this for the hex, for the hex. Yeah, I think I already answered this. I'm way behind Rude, on the chat, but yeah, the in 2 years, that's going to be a good question about liquidity, right? Will there be liquidity? Now, am I upset about that? No, I think there's going to be liquidity. I'm not worried about there being liquidity. There will be liquidity, but here's the thing: is might be thinner liquidity, and if people are because you can always just hold it and redeem it 1 for 1 for hex. You don't have to swap it around. And so the market's going to do whatever the market's going to do. And so if somebody really wants to get out of their hex stake, they can delegate it over, mint one of these tokens and put it on the market and take less value for it. And for me, being on the other side of that, I would think there's going to be buyers who want that cheap. So I'm not really super worried about the liquidity, but I do recognize it'd be pretty cool, right, to have stronger, more robust liquidity. And so a couple of ways that might happen is increased adoption of the system, increased values will create more volume, more opportunity for yield, like perhaps, and we'll just have to wait and see how it gets all adopted. But, perhaps seeing 5%, 6% APR just on the LP pools themselves would be enough. But it's got a pretty big mesh right now, liquidity mesh out there. So we're going to just have to keep going with that. BFAM, good to see you out here. You had done I think it was you that had done the posting of the AI work. Some of us have jumped into AI with the actuator protocol and gotten a bunch of feedback. About what it thinks, and as we're coming up with different views and whatnot. If you go over to the actuator finance, the actuator finance Telegram, it's actually some of the articles are posted in there. You can go get them. I don't think we can actually put them in the chat here. Maybe we do another stream sometime and talk about what the AI says and just feed it in there. We can actually do that. That probably might make more sense. So, and of course, I keep thinking, and this is what Dewey's saying too here in the chat. I'm a little price biased because we have such low prices, right? So, am I super excited about a couple bucks? Just how excited do people get over doing a trade and getting $2 worth of something extra, right? But when that's 10x, 20x, 100x, it's a different story, and so we can really see some things happen. I think where it could be pretty interesting, All right, let's see what else we got through out here. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, should we continue to DCA? No fear, no real gain. Apocalypse. I don't know which you're talking about, so I'll make it kind of general with Hex and all the rest. The ratios being the way they are, I'm definitely thinking that lowering cost basis makes a hell of a lot of sense in anything. Well, not anything, anything you truly believe in, right? So I think you have that. I've seen some alarmed posting today on X about the crypto cycle is over. It's over. It ended in October, dummies. I told you. And then you see some more stuff about it being, immediately after that going, being nope, it just shifted into 2026, right? And so again, we're just going to have to watch this whole thing play out. This is kind of why people need a playbook that isn't just, hey, I'm going to sell the top, right? You need a little bit better plan than, hey, I'm going to sell the top, right? And the reason for that is it's not always clear when the top is in. And, now I can look at all my indicators and stuff that I have. It doesn't say that we had a blow off top. We didn't. I can look at the chart and see that we had tops on a lot of tokens, right? You easily can go do that because you just look for when the price was higher. But we haven't had a blow off top, which is typically has been the end of a cycle for cryptos when you actually see a blow off top on Bitcoin or ETH. And both of those, they have ETFs this over the last year or so that came in and came into play. And you got the macros out there affecting the market. So you got to live in the day and kind of see what happens day over day and be able to react to it. But going back to my comment about planning is I mean, I still believe longer time frames make better sense and that crypto can go up over time. And that means lowering your cost basis and having that cost basis, in the units that you have can be quite profitable, in fact, right? And this way, and that's another point I think to be made with the actuator protocol. Because right up until Hedron, and even after with Hedron, I was kind of tentative that do I like HSIs? Do I not like HSIs? And I always said that, I had to be willing to hold the HSI until the redemption date to the end because I wasn't sure if a market would develop. Now, unfortunately, fortunately, a market developed for a period of time for HSIs in the form of the Hedron and Icosa ecosystem, but then that guy kind of got blown out due to various reasons, right? But it's kind of blown out, and there's really no market there for me to be able to sell into, or for me to be able to take value from, in terms of like I have this HSI, go do something with it, right? So I just don't have that available to me. And so this is like another run at that idea, right? And so, I mean, having the ability to have these HSIs and put them up into the protocol to get the HTTs that have, then you have the ability to do something with it today. I mean, I don't know. I'm not recommending people get out, but if somebody was like, hey, you know what? I am done. I have these stupid HSIs. I'm out. They could just go turn them in right now for whichever HTT they want to turn them in that they can mint from them. Take the HTTs, sell them on the market, and they could be out. They're not stuck there. So, you know what I'm saying? So that's that's the thing, right? So it makes things much more flexible. Purist point of view is, well, that's not really delayed gratification, and I get you. I get you on that point. I understand that that's not really the purest point of view, but I think we're way past purist at this point. We're way past that. I mean, for Christ's sakes, we're dealing with DEX launches with PulseX, Pulse Chain, tokens on multiple chains, new token launches, and I'm just talking about Richard. Never mind, never mind everything else. So we're way past the only thing that makes sense is just get one thing and hold it and only talk about that. I mean, it's Like it is the way it is, right? What are we going to do with this stuff? I mean, it's crypto, it's DeFi. People want to sell, they're going to sell. They want to buy, they're going to buy. They want to develop, they're going to develop. Uh, hey, Jay Soul, what are you doing, buddy? Yeah, I don't know about lack of marketing is the best option, but yeah, I hear you. People have been going hard on Richard lately, but yeah, for sure. So again, the idea of uh, of all this stuff is we are really the network, and I know people get kind of pissed at him, so I don't want to talk about his situation, whatever he's doing. But we were talking yesterday on stream. Our Hex is really set up now for it to be run by us. So I mean, what can the OA do? Oh, we can't do nothing, right? So yeah, I mean, outside it could pump the price or whatever, but we could, as a community, decide we love Hex so much we just buy the hell out of it, you know, and buy the people out that are going to get their big Hex stakes ended, and maybe they'll merge and stick, right? But any one of us individually probably can't do that, you know. So, but yeah, lots of criticisms out there right now overall for the chain and what. I'm not even qualified to really talk about it. I think there's no need, just don't know enough about everything that's happening out there. So I'll focus on the things that I like for now. All right, my friends. Well, now the J Soul is here. We got to get on the stream. Can't stay. But no, seriously, we're over an hour. I didn't think we went that far. I know this topic is deeper and etc. Than a lot of things that we might want to get into. It's a lot to get your head around. I think it's just knowing about it is probably pretty good. And so I'm assuming people who are interested in this topic are people who are still believing in crypto, still believing in pulse chain, still believing in Hex, and might want to know more about things that they can do with Hex. And so that's kind of like the setup for it. And like we were talking about a little bit earlier, under that framework, you could be looking at things like, hey, you know what? I like that I can get more Hex and it could be cheaper, and so maybe I want to get, take the other side of this where somebody traded out their HTTs, or put up LP, and they're willing to sell it cheaper and take them. And if you're one of the people who's gone down the golden brick road before of these doing farm LPs and farming, you have that option as well. And if you want to be totally insane and believe in Hex like I do, then you can just be like, I'm gonna just keep earning more. So it's kind of where we're at. All right, and then one final thing. I think this is a good thing here to bring up. Always doing is if people should, well, I would say test rather than experiment, but similar wording. Yeah, don't do anything you're not comfortable with. Do your own research. Go take a look at the actuator.finance site. It has all their documentation up there, their contracts, their immutable code, all that stuff. Their stuff. We do have the actuator uh, finance telegram, and so that's out there. You can ask for information. You want information there, and then I also put into the chat the link to the HEX bond market. And what I'm doing with that is it's just an information channel on Telegram that provides what I think is good information about all the HEX related items that are out there. Whether we're talking about Helgo, which by the way has a huge amount of liquidity with Hex, right? Whether we're talking about Helgo, Hedron, Maxi, Deci, etc., you can look at those as in combination with actuator, what I call a whole yield market. That's been put together that you can actually just go trade Hex forever. You know, if that was what you wanted to do, you got plenty of ways to do it and to earn off of the mispricing and whatever happens within the system. So with that, guys, hey, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. You have questions, get them to the founders, get them to the chat. You can send them to me. I'll try to answer them. And thanks for joining me. And we'll keep an eye out for that change in the HEX T-share rate. I didn't see it change while we're here, but we'll look. See it change. Nope, not yet. 43 and 43. It's not up yet, but it'll be changing soon. And maybe do some shorter ones like this, just going over the highlights from time to time. And with that, I'm out. You guys stay crispy. Have a great set.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart. Win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it. Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.